to the Universal Amphitheater. Well, here it is, the late 1970s, going on 1985. You know, so much of the music we hear today is pre-programmed electronic disco. We never get a chance to hear master bluesmen practicing their craft anymore. By the year 2006, the music known today as the blues will exist only in the classical records department of your local public library. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, while we still can, let us welcome from Rock Island, Illinois, the blues band of Joliet Jake and Elwood Blues, the Blues Brothers.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to start out by saying thank you once again for joining our Dev Invites or Lunch and Learns. Today we're going to kind of start talking a little bit about an Agile transformation using the Blues Brothers as an analogy. And a couple of years ago I was reading this book called Managing for Happiness by Jürgen Appello. And in this book, one of the comments he made was, when it comes to Agile, there is no such thing as best practices. There are only best principles. And having been an active coach for a couple of years, that went through me for a little bit of a loop and really forced me to kind of think about what that meant. So Jürgen was explaining that, there's no book you can read and imitate and expect to have a successful Agile transformation afterwards. The things that work at Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they might not work at a smaller organization like Nextiva. And anyone here ever read Spotify Labs white paper? No? All right, so it's pretty popular, but right at the top of the page, they have a giant warning that says, do not try this at home. Because what they're stressing is that they understand that Agile is what's important. The thought process, the principles, the values. It's not Kanban, it's not Scrum, it's not the practices, it's the principles that they're trying to drive home. So to me, what does it mean when I say we should strive for best principles? What I really think about is the fact that we should be applying these values and principles that we say we value to all of the decision making that we're doing. If you combine conscious decision making with Agile values and principles, I can assure you that as an organization, as a team, and as individuals, we are going to see an improvement in the way we operate. So you might not know this, but in 1980, there was this movie that came out called The Blues Brothers, and it has as much to do with the introduction of Agile principles as Toyota manufacturing, right? So really quick before we start, how many people here have heard of the Blues Brothers before, right? How many people have seen the movie, right? Awesome, enough people. I hope a whole bunch of you are going to watch the movie afterwards, right? So before we begin, I just want to let you know that when you walk out of here, the expectation is you're going to have an understanding of the values and the principles that we hold dear here at Nextiva and how we can apply them to our individual teams and projects. So, movie begins with Jake getting out of prison, right? Which is a great analogy for the traditional software delivery model, right? Unless Nextiva has been the only job you've had, how many people here have experienced that feeling of, oh my God, I'm trapped. It's an eternal death march. We're never going to get out of this project, right? It's pretty common. So that's where we start. But we know that this is a prelude to something better because this is only the beginning of the talk. Outside is his brother Jake waiting to pick him up, and the two of them are going to go off and discover better ways of delivering software. And we know that they're not just normal, ordinary developers, right? Because really quickly in the movie we discover that they can apply a strategic leap of faith. And because of that leap of faith, they're going to uncover a better way of doing things. And what's really cool is the Blues Brothers came out in 1980, and they didn't write the Agile Manifesto until 2001, and that's literally the first line of the Agile Manifesto. Right? So what do the brothers do? They drive back to the St. Helena of the Blessed Shroud Orphanage, which is where they grew up. And it's really important to note because this happens to also be the first principle of Kanban, which is start with what you know, right? Anyone want to guess why Kanban values start with what you know? No. Transformations are really, really hard, right? So why would we want to make things more difficult than we have to? If we can make small, incremental adjustments to our process, measure its effectiveness, decide if it's something we want to do more of, these are good things, right? So they talk with the nun. Turns out it's a pretty simple project. They just got to come up with $5,000, right? Jake's like, no problem, $5,000, I'll have it for you first thing in the morning, right? Remember, Jake just got out of jail. And the nun kind of looks at him, and one of the most iconic lines from the movie, right? She says, no, 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 I will not take your filthy stolen money. So what is she really telling the team? She's saying, hey, there are no shortcuts in software delivery. If you try and solve our next problems with the same thought process that solved our old problems, we're going to chase parity and innovation. It's near impossible, right? So of course, anytime we try something new, it's really difficult. And the brothers get unbelievably frustrated. And if you've seen the movie, you remember what happens, right? The nun takes out her yardstick and she starts beating the brothers mercilessly until they tell her that they can do what she's asking, and it gets so bad, Jake even throws himself down the stairs, right? So from the bottom of the stairs, what do? They go find their life coach, or as I like to refer to it, their Agile coach, right? And the Agile coach gives them some really great advice. He tells them, get wise, get to church. And what he's really saying is, hey, put yourself in a large room with a lot of people who are interested in solving the same problem you're trying to solve, and understand what it takes to do that. And of course, if you think about the scene, Jake looks at his watch the whole time. He's in the back of the room, right? He's your typical developer. He's like, why am I here? I'm only here because my manager told me to. And then all of a sudden he hears something and it resonates with him. And he understands what needs to happen. He understands the plan. He understands the implementation. He is so inspired, he does backflips down the middle of the aisle between all of the pews, right? Comes back, says, I know exactly what we got to do. We're going to put the band back together. We're going to play a couple of gigs. Bam, $5,000. They walk out of the church, and just like any other software development program, never survives first contact with reality, right? As soon as they get in the car, rollers, right? So, of course, Jake has a suspended license. They know they're probably going back to jail, and they're in some big trouble, right? And you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Agile values and principles? And the truth is, this particular slide didn't really have anything to do with Agile values and principles, but I wanted to bust a myth. A lot of people think we don't do any planning in Agile, and that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? We plan at an annual level. We plan at a quarterly level. Hopefully we plan at bi-weekly levels. You guys are doing daily stand-ups. That's actually a daily planning session. So we plan all the time. You just got to make sure that the appropriate detail and level of attention is applied depending on where you are in the life cycle of a project, a story, or a product, as the case may be. All right? So, Elwood looks at Jake and says, hey, don't worry about it. We're on a mission from God, right? And what he understood was they have a unified purpose and a shared understanding of what they're doing and how their end goal is going to benefit the organization that they're trying to serve. And this is extremely powerful when we talk about the differences between groups of individuals operating to accomplish the same objective and a team of self-organized people who understand how they interact with each other and the interconnectivity between them, right? So when Jake says they're not going to catch us, we're on a mission from God, what he's actually saying is, remember, if we build teams around motivated individuals, we give them a good environment to work in, and we trust them to get the job done, and we unleash them on our problems, this is going to be a great way to get the job done. So the cops are chasing the brothers, and they find themselves in a parking lot, and they're just circling around, and the cops are right behind them. And Jake looks at Elwood and he says, God damn it, I just got out of prison. I'm not going back. You got us into this mess. You get us out, right? And so in order for continuous improvement to really take hold inside of an organization, there are a few things we have to make sure we do, right? We have to make sure that we are free to experiment. We can't be afraid to fail when we try something new and see what happens, right? So what do the brothers do? He says, you want to get out of this parking lot? Jake makes a right, drives right into the mall, and they have one of the most epic car chase scenes in all of moviedom. Right? One of the things that I thought was so cool about this particular scene is, if you noticed, while they're driving around, Jake is constantly going, hey, did you see the store over there? Oh my God, they've got this in the mall. They've got everything. What Agile practice does it remind you of when we talk about a driver, a navigator, and someone pointing out pitfalls that might happen while you're coding? Anyone? That's pair programming, right? Look at it, 1980, pair programming was invented. It's kind of cool if you think about it. So, some of you guys might not know this, but before I became an Agile coach, I was actually a developer for a really long time. And this talk actually started out as a blog post that I wrote back in 2009. And one of the reasons why I did was my absolute favorite principle from all of Agile is sustainable pace, right? It's a huge thing. All of us have faced the opportunity where we've got a defect or a feature we just can't solve. We just can't seem to get it right. So in the movie, the late great Carrie Fisher was the nemesis to the Blues Brothers, right? This woman was vicious. We're talking automatic gunfire, flamethrowers, rocket launchers. Knocked a building down around the brothers even once. But because they understood and valued some of the other principles that Agile preaches, like delivering working software that is potentially, or even better, accidentally shippable, and we know that these stories were prioritized and they're valuable to end users because our product owners told us this is what we should be doing, well then we should never actually experience the death march, right? Because we are practicing that sustainable pace. And the most important thing is we know that every morning we can brush ourselves off from whatever happened yesterday and we say, hey, it's almost 9 o'clock. Well, for some of you, it's almost 9 o'clock, it's time to go to work, right? And you know that when you go to work, you're going to deal with the most important problems that Nextiva faces. It's an extremely motivating experience. All right, tell me if this also sounds familiar. You found out that the company has a really, really important project that they're just about to start. And they're going to put together a team of all rock stars, right? The best developers we have, the best UI, best engineers, best of everything. But in the end, what we really discovered is there's a small mismatch between the skill sets of the best people we have and the outcome that the business actually desired, right? Because you see, the Blues Brothers, as a team, they knew that they had to play gigs to make some money. And they knew that they were really good musicians. And they knew that Bob's Country Bunker needed some musicians to play that night. But what they forgot was an extremely important principle in Agile, which is make sure you satisfy the customer, right? The Blues Brothers, they are the real deal when it comes to playing blues music. But when you walk in and the customer expects country or Western, it wouldn't matter if you were B.B. King, you're getting beer bottles thrown at you and you're getting booed off the stage, right? And the important lesson to learn from all of this is we don't build software because we think it's cool to build software. We build software to solve real problems for real people so that we can generate more revenue for Nextiva. So keep that in mind. What is the ceremony we have after a sprint or a cycle and we get to review our challenges? What's that ceremony called? A retrospective, right? So the brothers tried to play this gig at Bob's Country Bunker and it was a complete disaster, right? So they figured, hey, we got to recircle up, kind of have a conversation, figure out what happened. Whammo, first retrospective happens in the steam tub. And one of the important things that they learned in the retrospective is the first time they tried to plan this project, they did it without the team. So they made sure that when they got into planning, they invited the team this time, right? And they learned two important lessons from their retrospective that they brought with them into planning. And that is, first, the business and engineering, we have to work together every single day. This ensures that we stay focused on the most important items and that we have visibility into whether or not we are quote unquote on track to what it is we are trying to solve, right? And then the second part was that by including all of the team in the conversation from the beginning of planning, we all end up with the same mental model of what we're trying to achieve and the outcome that will be positive for us, right? So while not a core principle in Agile, both Scrum and Kanban have additional principles that they bring to the table. And two of them are openness and transparencies, right? So this manifests itself in multiple of different ways amongst the teams. First and foremost, making sure that anyone who has an interest in the outcome of your project is aware of when your ceremonies are and that they're willing, that they are willing or invited to attend these ceremonies, as long as they respect the purpose of them, right? I wouldn't expect 12 product managers to attend your daily stand-up and all expect to speak in that 15 minutes, but they definitely can be there to observe if they have an interest in what your team is producing, right? We try and put all of our teams together because face-to-face communication, it's the best way to exchange information amongst each other. And by making us all sit together, we have the opportunity for osmotic learning and pull different views in when we're having conversations. One of the biggest challenges is how do we make sure that we've gotten the correct input before we decide what to build? And then last but not least is the demo, right? This is the ultimate sign of transparency, because what we're doing in the demo is we're saying, this is what we actually completed. We know what we told you we were going to do and what we expected to finish. This is real. This is deployed. This is working. This is what we actually completed. So the band walks out of their planning session. They know what they need to do. They validated the capacity of the teams and the velocity of the program, and they all run forth to do what they have to do. A whole multitude of teams working together to accomplish the same objective. It's beautiful. And one of the things that they also do is they know that they have to start socializing what's going to happen in the demo, where the demo is going to be, right? One of those greatest signs, they're driving down the beach in their Bluesmobile, and they see two girls on a motorcycle. You two girls over there on the motorcycle, tell your friends, this is what's happening, this is what you're going to see, right? We're all responsible for socializing what it is that we do. So they make it to the concert, and the concert is a smashing success. It's awesome, right? At the end of the concert, record mogul comes over and says, I want to give you guys a contract. Here's $10,000. The guys need $5,000 to pay off their taxes. And they said, wow, success. It feels so good. And unfortunately, Jake looks at Elwood and reminds him that, hey, the objective wasn't to earn $5,000 to pay the property taxes. The definition of done was pay the property taxes. And that is the impediment, or the impetus for the greatest line in the movie, right? It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. We're wearing sunglasses. It's dark. Jake looks at Elwood and tells him, hit it, right? What they're saying is every once in a while we understand that we acquire technical debt, right? Hey, in order to get to the demo on time and earn the money, we had to take a shortcut, but now we got to get to Chicago before the sun comes up. And Jake says, if you got to do it, you got to do it, right? That is one of our realities in life. Now, the Blues Brothers were way ahead of their time. I get it, right? 1980s, they're already talking about agile principles. Think about it. How many people in here were even alive when this movie came out? Right? Oof, not nearly enough. Right? But unfortunately, you know, Agile is a great way to deliver working software to production. The problem is that if you don't remember the culture of DevOps, it doesn't mean a hill of beans if you can't keep the system up and running, right? And if you don't believe me, you can just ask the boys, right? Because at the end of the movie, they all end up back in prison because that was the one thing that they definitely forgot to think about. All right. So while The Blues Brothers was a funny movie, and I really loved it. It had some amazing talent associated with this movie, right? Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Johnny Lee Hooker. There were so many cameos in this movie you can't even imagine. So while it started out as a comedy, the one thing I can say is the movie was made with soul, right? And that had a huge lasting impact on me. So some of the parting words that I want to leave you guys with is when you leave and you get back to your desks and you're getting ready to start working on your project, I need you guys to find the empathy for the users who are going to be using the system that you're building, right? I want you to unite and unify behind the purpose of what it is you're trying to accomplish, and I want you to demonstrate your craftsmanship, right? It's really important that you take the pride in what you're doing. So what I tell everyone is no matter what you do, just remember, you got to do it with soul, the way the Blues Brothers did, right? So before we get going, I just want to do a quick shout out to Kyle and Hannah, right? So this is the third or fourth one of these Devin Bites type talks that I've given. It was an awesome collaborative experience. I hope it came through in the quality of the slides and the presentation. And for those of you online, the streaming and the broadcasting, it was a great collaborative experience. So I really thank both of you a lot as far as that's concerned. Now we are going to shortly cut off the live broadcast and we'll do a Q&A here. But for those of you who are on the broadcast, I would really appreciate it if you can do me a favor, thumbs up, thumbs down, depending on whether or not this was worth your time, and then a comment underneath so that we can improve what it is we do all the time. Thank you very much.